A friend repeatedly touched me in front of my wife, and I kicked her out. Am I right to do this? Before I, 32M, delve into the current situation, some context is necessary to understand my reaction. I have experienced two traumatic incidents, one at age 6 and another at age 28, both involving women and unwanted touching. In both instances, I was powerless, once as a child and once as an adult, incapacitated to the extent of losing control of my bowels and bladder. Both my wife and our guest are aware of my past. I'm sharing this background to provide clarity without violating any rules, as it is crucial to the situation at hand. Now, to the current situation, we have a 26-year-old female friend who is currently living in a tent. We often invite her over so she can take care of hygiene needs like doing laundry and showering. On this occasion, I decided to play some computer games while she was taking care of her tasks and hanging out with my wife. We were all chatting intermittently. As she was wrapping up her visit, she approached me from behind and tapped me with a hairbrush. Not hard, but enough to get my attention. It startled me, and I immediately snapped at her, telling her to stop. When I looked up at her from my chair, she did it again. I repeated my demand for her to stop, making direct eye contact, but she did it once more and then demanded a hug. I firmly refused, saying, "Fuck no, I don't want to touch you," and warned her that if she continued, I would kick her out. She laughed, said, "Whatever, I'm leaving anyway," and touched me again. At this point, I stood up, feeling extremely panicked and angry. We had a brief physical altercation, not a full-blown fight, and I ended up shouting at her to leave and never come back. I felt completely violated in my own home. Despite my repeated refusals and both my wife and our guest hearing them, both insisted it was just a game and that she didn't mean any harm. Elle acknowledged that my behavior wasn't ideal, and I have been seeking long-term treatment for PTSD related to my experiences as an Army MP and the aforementioned personal incidents. Nonetheless, I should not have reacted in anger the way I did. Am I wrong for feeling violated and upset? Or are my wife and the guest right in saying it was just a harmless game? Edit. To be completely upfront, the situation escalated, and I reacted poorly. Physical contact was involved, but as others have pointed out, I was near panic and overwhelmed due to my past experiences. Edit 2. I'm going to try and respond to a few more posts. Then I need to take a break. Thank you to everyone who took the time to write comments or interact with me. Edit 3. My husband gave me access to this account, and I told him I wrote down my perspective. When I asked if I should add it, he said, "It's up to you." So here it is. Our friend approached my husband, who was playing an online cooperative action game on his computer at his desk. I was sitting on the couch about 8 feet behind them, waiting for my friend to be ready for me to drive her home. She was wearing a long nightshirt with a loose V-neck. She stood at his left side peripheral for about 2 seconds before she tapped the back of her hairbrush firmly against the side of his left shoulder. I immediately felt uncomfortable because I don't tend to engage in horseplay unless someone has repeatedly demonstrated that they enjoy and want it. I do enjoy my husband's frequent physicality with me, including picking me up or tickling me. My friend and husband have engaged in horseplay on many occasions before, tickling, poking at one another's stomach, and playfully throwing soft objects. This often included my friend's fiancée, who usually only reciprocated with my friend. I frequently smack my husband on the butt, but only when I am sure he is in a mood to be okay with it. My husband said, "Hey, I'm busy," and didn't turn to her at first. She hit him again with the brush in the same spot, and my husband said stop in a normal voice. My friend responded by saying, "Give me a hug," which we almost always do at the end of visits. I don't remember if she hit him again because at this point, he said something along the lines of, "If you don't stop, I'll make you leave." She replied lightly that it didn't matter anyway, she was leaving. At this point, I realized by her teasing tone that she didn't understand how upset he was getting, which I did understand from years of experience with his tone of voice and what it means. He didn't raise his voice, and I could hear that he was attempting to remain casual as he said something else, ending with, "My dude." But she had really pushed him past the point of anger, and I didn't think she realized it. She put her hand on his shoulder and he said, "I don't want to fucking touch you now." He stood up, grabbed her by the neck of her shirt, pulling her forward, and then put both hands around her throat. I saw his hands tense as he leaned down into her face and told her to leave the house and never come back. He pushed her backward, and she started to cry, hurrying to pick up her things. My husband sat back down at his desk and didn't say anything else until I told him I was going to take the friend home and would be back, to which he said, "Sure." The friend cried during the ride home and her voice was harsh, but I wasn't sure if it was stress or physical. She did have marks on her throat, but those faded over the next few hours. She repeatedly asked me why he got so upset and if anything was different. I pointed out to her that he had said stop, and she said she thought it was part of the play. When I returned home, my husband did not seem upset and appeared more relaxed than before, although he seemed nervous about my response to the situation. He said he didn't remember putting his hands around her throat when I told him that he did. Here are my thoughts on the situation. 1. Horseplaying with people who have experienced trauma, which all three of us have to varying degrees and in different forms, is potentially dangerous. I often feel uncomfortable when it happens, though I rarely voice my concerns. I usually don't initiate social teasing, even though I often enjoy being on the receiving end of it. 2. Our friend should have stopped when she heard the word stop. I don't know why she didn't, but I don't believe it was out of malice. She genuinely didn't seem to realize how she was provoking him. 3. While her actions were inappropriate, his response was potentially life-threatening, and his failure to remember what he did is alarming. I'm worried this could happen again, and he might face legal consequences if he is the initial physical aggressor. This would be even worse if he unintentionally harms someone. The escalation of force combined with memory issues in this latest incident makes me fear it could recur. 4. I might have been able to prevent this by stopping her sooner or by intervening between them. However, I know from experience that once he has a grip on someone, I'm not strong enough to break it, and he tends to ignore or physically shake me off if I try to intervene. He doesn't listen to me during these times. I expected her to notice he was upset before he snapped, as it seemed obvious to me, but she didn't, and I have no idea why. She has also experienced significant trauma, as have I, including sexual assault, and has worked in jobs dealing with traumatized individuals, similar to my own experience. Relevant comments. Husband clarifies multiple times that he wasn't trying to choke. Friend, husband here. I want to clarify that I actually aimed for her jaw or mandible to apply a hold, which is an extremely common restraint technique used by military police and in some of my other work. However, I faltered and ended up grabbing her neck and shoving. There was some confusion with my spouse because she only saw me grab the neck, and our memories of the incident differ. Nevertheless, I believe it's important for her post to remain unchanged since it reflects her perspective. This person was fully informed about my reactive nature and my past in great detail. She was a trusted individual, which is why she was allowed into our home. Given her awareness of everything, she should have been prepared for any potential reactions. Edit. Thank you also for taking the time to share your experience and respond. Commenter. To the husband. You need additional support for your PTSD. More therapy is necessary to equip you with the tools to recognize when you are about to be triggered and to de-escalate yourself before reaching the point of reacting. Medication may also be helpful until you acquire and master these skills and tools. To the wife. You are likely a safe person for your husband, meaning he tends to be more relaxed around you. When he is on the verge of being triggered, he likely expects your help in de-escalating the situation. This expectation isn't because it's your responsibility, but rather due to the pattern you've established together. He has learned that you're a safe presence and that you can help reduce his triggers, because you are his safe person and have learned to recognize his pre-triggered state through his tone of voice. And because you've developed a pattern where you're able to de-escalate situations, it's important for you to respond when you detect a change in his tone. This might involve telling your friend, "Stop, he's not in a playful mood," or advising your husband, "Hun, take a few deep breaths, you're safe," or both. You need to do something, or you both need to work on breaking this established pattern so that his brain understands you can't always help. Either option, continuing to help him or breaking the pattern, is acceptable, but you both need to make that decision together and stick with it. If you choose to remain his safe person who helps, you have to help every time because his brain relies on it. This reliance is unconscious, but significant. My husband also has PTSD, and I am his safe person, so I fully understand what it's like. Similarly, I have PTSD, and my husband is my safe person, so I know what that's like too. It's challenging work, but it's necessary if you want to maintain your relationship. I believe the effort is worth it, but that's a decision only you can make for yourself, to both of you. Horseplay is extremely detrimental for individuals with PTSD and must be avoided at all costs. Cease all forms of pranks and unexpected jokes immediately. Refrain from any kind of horseplay. If you wish to make each other laugh or enjoy humor with friends, opt for dad jokes, knock-knock jokes, or play games like Cards Against Humanity. Avoid physical comedy entirely. Do not engage in any unexpected touching or any touch that could be perceived as playful yet hurtful. Do not intentionally startle anyone. It is crucial to eliminate all potential triggers. My verdict. ESH, everyone needs more therapy and everyone needs to change behavior patterns. Husband here. Firstly, I want to thank you for taking the time to write such a detailed and thoughtful response. It is truly appreciated. I also agree with the points you've made. I need more tools, and medication is definitely one of them. I am very hopeful that due to a recent VA rating increase, I will have more options available that can address my specific needs. Commenter. Both of you need to concentrate on managing your own emotions and actions, rather than expecting others to interpret your subtle cues and alter their behavior accordingly. You are both overanalyzing the situation to evade acknowledging the unhealthy nature of all the reactions involved. It is essential for both of you to invest time in discovering your individual identities outside of this relationship. This dynamic is highly codependent and unhealthy. No one should be indifferent about the misuse of physical force. Believing that such behavior is excusable indicates a significant level of denial. You, dear husband, pose a danger to those around you and should feel profoundly troubled by your actions. Husband here. No one is happy. This is basically the worst possible outcome. As mentioned in the post, but I'll go over it again here, it was the worst possible way to react. With that being said, I'm not looking for justification. She has been a friend for years and has been made aware of all my issues in detail, including the boundaries I set regarding them. Until recently, she had been fine with stopping when necessary. Hopefully that clears things up more. I can definitely answer more questions if you want. Commenter. I don't believe you fully comprehend what I said. You are further intellectualizing the situation to justify your behavior. I don't think you are a bad person, but you are not taking responsibility for how your failure to address your PTSD and emotional regulation is affecting those around you. Your wife is making excuses for you and monitoring your behavior like someone in an abusive relationship because you aren't managing your emotions properly. Your friend being aware of your issues in detail is not an action plan. You need to engage in some intensive therapy. Right now, you are a ticking time bomb for those around you, and you need to look inward to address these issues. You are the problem, and you are not showing any signs of working on the root cause. Instead, you focus on reasoning and explanations to make others do the work for you, which unfortunately never ends well. Consider looking into dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, and accessing the VA for better psychological support. As a veteran myself, I am not just speaking without experience. You need help. Another commenter. Wife. You observed that he was becoming upset and noticed that she was unaware of his escalating emotions. You are also familiar with his history. While it's true that you can't break his grip once he reaches the point of physically restraining someone, you had the opportunity to intervene and stop her from teasing him when it became clear he wasn't reacting as she expected. Why did you choose not to get up and stop her, instead of merely watching as she pushed him past the point of no return? I want to make it clear that I am absolutely not defending his actions. In fact, I find it alarming that he seems to have no recollection of putting his hands on her throat, unless he does remember, and is simply glossing over it in his original post. Frankly, I would find it impossible to stay with someone who responds in such a manner, regardless of how great they might be when they aren't triggered to that extent. Having been choked in an abusive context myself, I can firmly say I do not recommend staying in such situations. However, you seem to be aware that he is capable of such behavior, and yet you chose to stay with him. Given this awareness, I believe you bear some responsibility for protecting others who might unknowingly provoke him in a way that could elicit such a dangerous response. The wife. I do. You're right. I am beyond sad that I didn't act, and yes, I really should have acted faster. My parents used to fight, sometimes violently, usually just breaking stuff and yelling. And when it comes to people I care about, I don't handle their out-of-control anger well. After this incident happened, I sort of lost all my emotions for several hours, which I guess isn't unusual for me in a situation like this. Professionally, it's very different. And I don't react like this at all. I feel like it would be beneficial for us to discuss some sort of protocol for times like these so that both of us can be more prepared. I would suggest exposure therapy or something to keep me from dissociating or whatever it is. But how would one even do that? I'd like to be able to do or say something in the moment that would help, but I'm not sure what that would be. I love him, and he's awesome. Ordinarily one of the most chill, easygoing, fun people. And I love that about him. This stuff isn't his fault, but I'm afraid of the future legal and personal issues it might bring down on him. Okay, next story. How can I let my boyfriend know that his habit is affecting my sex drive? My boyfriend has always been a heavy stoner. When we first met and started dating 2 years ago, some events made him realize that being high all day, every day, was negatively impacting his life. He also got fired from his job, partially related, and had to cut back on smoking because he couldn't afford an ounce every week. Initially, I didn't take our relationship seriously until I saw him sober. Once he started smoking less, our relationship became much more serious. I don't have a problem with smoking itself, but I do have an issue with him being constantly high. We now live together, and overall, our relationship is really great. However, recently he's started taking dabs at night. I'm not too familiar with the terminology. And he becomes a different person when he does. This other person is so annoying that I can barely stand it. He talks non-stop, changes topics randomly every few minutes, asks me questions but interrupts my answers to talk about something else entirely. He also engages in what seems like physical comedy, doing weird voices right in my face and poking me, like a little brother trying to pester me. Then, he'll usually try to initiate sex when I'm already extremely irritated. Additionally, the dabs make his facial hair smell repulsive, which intensifies my aversion. This wasn't a big issue when he only got this high occasionally, but lately, it's been happening every night. As a result, I never want to sleep with him after he's been annoying me all evening. We end up going months without sex because every time there's an opportunity, he gets too high first. I've talked to him several times about needing to feel like we're on the same mental plane to want to have sex, and about how unhinged and irritating he gets when he's really high. However, he just thinks he's being hilarious and that I'm being grumpy. He also wants me to get stoned with him, but I don't really enjoy smoking that much. When I do smoke, I usually just want to go to sleep. How can I kindly communicate to him that his behavior is incredibly annoying and that I can't have sex with someone who acts like an annoying brother? Or how can I get past this irritation so I can connect with my partner? Relevant comments. Commenter, this isn't going to change as long as he's constantly high. It won't. Know that and go from there. You put it well here. You didn't start feeling serious until you had a chance to know him sober. You're going to have to be straight with him. I fell in love with the sober you. This version of you doesn't work for me. If he asks, get specific. But I bet his response will be to attempt to tone down his behavior while stoned. He's 33 years old. This is who he is. Take him or leave him. Answer, he still isn't constantly stoned. He was for like 15 years before we met, and maybe like the first 3 months that we were dating. Then he lost his job, for a lot of reasons, some his fault, others not, and didn't have money for an ounce a week, so he started smoking less and less. When he was high all the time, I thought he was kind of dumb but fun, and I didn't really see him that often. He was fun to go out with and fun in small doses. Once I saw him sober, I realized he was super funny and nice and interesting. He hasn't started smoking like that again. But at night after dinner, he now smokes dabs. Takes dabs? I don't know. And those seem to hit differently. He doesn't seem to think they do hit differently, so when I'm like, "You're annoying when you take dabs," he acts like I'm saying that a shot of whiskey makes him more annoying than a shot of vodka, and he's like, "It can't possibly." I feel like I'm not explaining the issue clearly. He isn't constantly stoned, but he usually is around the time that bedroom things might happen. Update, 15 days later. The same day I posted that last advice post, we had tickets to an event, and afterwards we went out for dinner and drinks. The event was a themed cocktail tasting, which made us more talkative and candid than usual due to the numerous small drinks we had. He brought up that he felt we hadn't been meshing well lately and thought it might be related to his increased smoking. This opened the floodgates for me. I explained that I had been trying to find a kind and gentle way to address this issue without attacking his behavior. I told him that when he takes dabs, he becomes really irritating, and that this wasn't a new topic since I had mentioned it before. I expressed that it was hard for me to want to be intimate with him after he had been bouncing off the walls and having one-sided conversations for however long. I emphasized that I love him and our life together, but his habit of getting too high to function every night was both annoying and genuinely concerning. I asked him what he felt he needed to numb every single night that required him to get that high. I also pointed out that if this were alcohol instead of weed, he wouldn't even argue. If he were getting an equivalent amount of drunk, he would completely understand how he'd be acting out of pocket and messy. But because it was weed, he gave himself a pass. He asked a few clarifying questions, but otherwise totally agreed with me. He said he was going to try not smoking at all for a while. I genuinely didn't think this would happen, but it did. The first 3 days were really rough. He went through actual withdrawals, which was shocking to witness. He had zero emotional regulation and broke into intense tears multiple times over minor inconveniences. He became super paranoid and had panic attacks. He got nauseous and struggled to eat. It was really surprising. Although I knew he'd been an everyday smoker for almost 2 decades, I didn't realize weed had such withdrawals. However, he has stuck to not smoking and has been talking a lot about how much better he feels without it. He's become more even-tempered. He was always pretty emotional and struggled with depression. Many of his depression and anxiety symptoms have disappeared. He has more energy and has started working out a lot more. Our sex life has been perfect, and we've been having more intimate and interesting conversations. I feel like our relationship has been perfect. He has smoked twice since then, both times in social settings and in moderation. No dabs, no being completely zonked. I'm really proud of him and glad I was able to be so candid. So thanks for all the advice that wasn't, he's a loser, dump him. How do you like these stories? Write your opinion in the comments. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Love you.